So you've finished step 2, the inside leg seams, and now you're ready for step 3, the rise or the crotch of your boxers. So you're going to slide one leg inside the other, and as you're doing that, it should be good against good. Then grab the top seam, that would be the two backs, and throw a pin in. And it can help if someone can hold this for you. Grab the seam right at the middle, the inside leg seams that you just sewed, pin those flat, and then just throw a few more seams because it is curved and you want it to stay together. So I'm pinning one there, another one up here, and now I should be ready to sew this. So I'm just making sure the other leg is totally inside so I don't worry about sewing something I don't want to sew. I'm going to line this top edge here, the back, up at the 15, foot down, needle down, make sure those threads are in the back, that foot's tight. Sew a stitch or two, reverse a stitch or two, stop and take out pins when they're in your way. So take your time, being careful to keep the edge of the fabric quite close to the 15. You should always see that 5 poking out. Stop and take out that pin. Now it is a curved line, so if you wanted beforehand, you could have taken the tailor's chalk and drawn the line 1.5 centimeters from the edge. But by now you're probably fine to keep that edge of the fabric by the 15. But feel free to draw the line if you feel that will make it easier, because it does give you a line to follow. Take out that pin. And really I probably should make this a free arm, so I'm going to pull this off. So that now this can slide in, and it's probably a good idea to do that at the beginning, but it did help to do it right now, because I'm getting to the narrow part of the crotch seam. So I'm coming down, still keeping it by the 15, and I'm going to stop for a second and make sure that this seam on the bottom is flat, and also on the top, and I'll take that pin out. I'm going to hold it flat with my fingers, come through, still sewing, keeping it on the 15, and eventually I'm going to come back to that front seam, the very first seam that I sewed. I'll get up there, overlap it, and do a little reverse. So now I've sewn that whole crotch seam. So I'll cut those threads that I just finished. I'll cut the original ones at the top. And now what I'm going to do is zigzag that seam just like you did on your sample. So I'm going to switch the pattern selector dial from A1 to A3. The top width dial I'm going to put to 4, and I'm going to line this up. I'm going to keep that underneath so I don't sew the wrong part. I'm going to use the free arm. Foot down right by that first straight line that I sewed. A couple of stitches, reverse back, and again just zigzagging right beside that stitching line. Trying not to go past it or too far away from it, just right directly beside it. Take your time, because again it's a curve. If you feel like you need to stop and rearrange, feel free, or stop and do any pivoting. You don't want to speed this. When I get close to that seam in the middle, I like to put the needle in, lift the foot up, lift it, and make sure again that that is flat. Put it back down, and I'm just going to hold it with my fingers. I'm getting very close to the edge where I clipped it. Right to the bottom of the fly, I go right to the very end, and then reverse. Now you take it out, cut my threads and my other, and now I'm going to trim half of this seam off. So I'm going to start right at the bottom of the fly, and again cutting very close to the zigzagging, but don't cut the stitches. So you're cutting about half of this off. So you'll cut all the way to the very top, right through that seam, which could be a little thick. Just keep cutting all the way up, and then when you finish, you're going to bring this to the steamer and press that seam to one side using the tailoring ham. So the two legs are still inside each other, and I need to pull one out. So now it looks like a pair of boxers, and I'm going to turn it toward the back, slide the seam the tailoring ham inside that seam, and I'm just going to press it to one side. So this first part of the back is straight. That's fairly straightforward. And as I slide it in farther, now I'm getting to more of the curve. I'm turning the tailoring ham on its side, trying to allow the fabric to fall away. So when I press, I'm just pressing the seam. I'm not pressing those legs and getting wrinkles and creases where I don't want them. Pull it down a little bit farther. So you go through that seam in the middle where the inner legs are and continue along until you get to the very end, the bottom of the rise. And then you can flip it right side out, press that seam again on the good side, and then just check and make sure also that there's no inadvertent creases or wrinkles from where you press that curved seam. Just press everything else and make sure when you're all done, you have a nice even pair of pressed boxers.